I got the walk, there's a longboard walk. I know the talk, the longboard talk.
G'day, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, wherever you're joining us from around Australia and around the world. It's Happy Friday, Oz longboarding time. I'm Weeksy from WA. Been a lovely week over here. We've had some miserable weather, which has been a nice rest from all the glorious winter conditions we've been having. But let's check in around the state. We're missing a couple of our presenters tonight. We'll talk you through that as we go. But joining us on the bottom right-hand corner of Australia, all the way across the other side of the country from me in Sydney, Matty Chinosky. G'day, Waxhead. How are you, mate?
Good Weeksy. Hope everyone's doing well. And it's nice to line up again. This will be my third installment of the Oz Longboarding podcast. And I know I missed that first one, but it's been a great week of small little longboard waves. As I said last week, we're going to be in for some fun little waves, and it's looking like a fantastic week ahead here for longboarding and the waves up the coast towards Byron. It's going to be a really good little, if you know where to look, there's going to be some great waves on the east coast of Australia. Unreal.
Good to hear. And between you and I, in the man with the most sought-after job in Australia at the moment, in my opinion, from the Tullamarine Wave Pool, surf guide Nathan Riverland. How are you, mate?
Good, Weeksy. Good, yeah. It's been a pretty good week of waves down here as well. We've been, had some awesome longboarding waves on the points, and we've got a bit more swell coming this weekend, so it's going to be epic. Can't wait.
Beautiful. We're getting closer to our special guest tonight, but before we get there, the man who made it all possible, just down the road from our special guest, in fact, on the Gold Coast, Mr. Sean McEwen. How are you, big fella?
Good. Hey, hi to everyone tonight. Mate, we've had 2 days of pumping surf down on the southern points, solid 4 to 6 foot, and with the sand in the right place, it has been really good waves for everyone.
Unreal. Couple of
one thing I will mention. Sorry?
Bit of a tragic incident your way during the week.
Yeah, I was just going to mention our thoughts and prayers go out to Rob Predetti's family. He was fatally injured by a shark down on the South Kingscliff beach on Sunday. And, it was pretty unfortunate. I did speak to Turbo this morning, Dean Bevan, for those who know him. He said not too many of the crew have been venturing back into the water since then.
No, fair enough too, mate. Better safe than sorry, and condolences with family and friends and the whole surfing tribe in northern New South Wales beaches. I know as a West Aussie what that feels like when you start getting a couple of nibblies around. So wishes and everyone stay safe. Now, we'll move right along though, because we're here to talk about happier longboarding things. On the Sunshine Coast, we've got a special guest because our normal correspondent, Kirra, is on top of her 17 daytime jobs that she has decided to be a wedding coordinator this weekend, so she can't join us. Her place, not quite so pretty, but just as good a surfer. G'day, Riley Thomson.
Hey everyone. My name is Riley Thomson. I'm so stoked that Kirra couldn't make it on and I could make a little guest appearance on here. So thanks so much, Kirra. So I surf for the Clancy Malibu Club up on the sunny coast. And there's been some decent waves the last few days. It's actually been pretty sizey. So I've been having a lot of fun. Can't wait for the podcast.
Unreal, mate. And I was lucky enough to be there in person as you took out every division except for the girls at the recent Agnes Water Winter the Classic. I can't remember what the full name of it was, but fun times up there, mate. And you've been getting yourself a bit of notoriety around the place.
Yeah, well, there you go. It was a lot of fun up there at Agnes. I've been going for the last 3 or 4 years. And it's always a great weekend to just hang out with people from, Agnes and from all the different comps, in Queensland, and a few people from New South Wales as well. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Excellent. Great to have you on board, and thanks for filling in for Kirra. For the lady viewers out there, we almost had Fenna the King, but unfortunately her social life interfered at the last moment. But would have been a great chance to talk to another photographer, because I'm really excited now to speak to our tonight's special guest. I've known him for a few years now, and you probably know him through his various ventures. And once we start talking, you may even recognise some of his amazing images. To talk to us tonight about all things photography related, thank you so much for joining us. Famous for Liquify magazine, Mr. Luke Sorensen on the Gold Coast. How are you, mate?
Hey, everybody. How you going?
Awesome, mate.
Hey, welcome, Luke.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks. Hey, just thanks, Sean, and thanks, Jason, of course, for inviting me on the show and putting this sort of stuff together. I think it's a great idea to keep the conversation going with longboarding. You know, it's been one of those sports that's had its up and downs and resurgences, but this sort of digital platform and spreading information, having conversations, it's really, really good to see.
Mate, I was lucky enough to meet you through being the commentator at the Australian Longboard Surfing Open, thanks to Shawnee McEwen. And so I've been mates with you for a little while now. I hope you don't mind me saying that in public. But
I don't know if it's going to get you anywhere.
Definitely won't put me on the invite list for Councillor Tate's next dinner party, but we won't go into that here.
No.
What I'm interested in, mate, is how did you originally get involved in photography in the first place? Because tonight we've asked you on to help out our viewers with a few of their photography questions. So let's start off with that.
Like a lot of people, when you get into something, it's usually your parents that do it. It was my dad, actually, when I was about 13 or 14. I took an interest in his camera, and he went down the pawn shop and bought me, like, I don't know, $20 worth of camera gear. Said, here, son, go and see what you can do. And, you know, thousands of dollars later and years later of wasting rolls of film and shooting pictures of absolutely nothing, you start to get your head around what it takes to make a good image. And then you sort of fell in love with it. And, of course, surfing was something we did as kids growing up here on the Gold Coast. So the marriage of those two was just a natural progression of not just taking photos, but finding the things I want to take pictures of, which, of course, was not so much surfing, but the ocean, the waves, you know, everything that happens in the ocean. So. And,
well, Sean McEwen was actually giving me a bit of a background about your own family involvement on the Gold Coast. You've been a passionate supporter of environmental projects to try and keep things much the same as the way they are. And Sean tells us that the Sorensons have been there on the Goldie for quite some time.
Yeah, my mother's side of the family, probably over 100 years now of coming to the Gold Coast and living here and raising kids and all sorts of things. So when, you know, when politicians and developers come in, especially on our beaches, and want to carve things up and turn them into whatever they think's a good idea, you know, we're there. And as I got older, I realised, you know, instead of saying someone should do something about it, that someone inevitably becomes you. So, you know, you take on the reins. And you go out there and not just wave placards and protest, but do the research and get the community together as one and campaign to preserve, you know, the things that are important to our community here, which, you know, and on the Gold Coast, there's no limit to how many threats there are ongoing to our beaches and to our foreshores. It's like a sort of a circus wheel that just keeps coming back and back. But hey, you know, we love it up here. It's the best of both worlds. We've got a busy city, but we've also got this wonderful nature here. So we try to make sure we go to have both.
Yeah, good on you, mate. And on behalf of all ocean users in the area, thanks for the fight you've put up all these years. And obviously, if we can be of any assistance through Oz Longboarding to protect those iconic surfing locations from stupid developments, then we're more than happy to help where we can. But look, I've seen a few photos of you standing on stage with punk rock bands and this sort of stuff. What's that all about?
Oh, well, music's been, you know, like a young sort of, you know, troublesome teenager and young adult on the Gold Coast. You go and see a lot of bands, and that was also a big thing that I was into. So quite a few years ago now, but I started taking pictures sort of my mates' bands and doing things on the side, and I got a bit of a flair for it. So I just started hitting up some of the more famous bands around the world, bands that I was into. Look, there we've got Public Enemy there. Can I do some work for you and find a medium that, you know, suits you, whether it be shooting videos or stills or just producing content. And yeah, a few of those bands have taken me up on the offer, and I've gotten to travel around the world and go on some of the biggest stages, biggest festivals, and it's been a pretty wild ride. So right now I'm doing a lot of music video content for people, dabbling here and there, doing stills for people, and just helping. I've had a fair dose of the industry and seen what it takes for bands to just sort of not just perform, but get something back for themselves. So I like helping people out with that. And visual content, of course, is at the forefront of what it is. So I love taking pictures of bands in the mosh pit, diving off stages, all that sort of stuff, mate. It's where it's at. So
unreal. And of course, in being in the pit in the front, being elbowed by all the other photographers and things are dark and flashing lights and all the rest of it, it must make surf photography pretty relaxing by competition. But let's get into the surf photography side of things, because that's how we met. And of course, that's how a lot of people know you and your work. Shortboard surfing as well as longboarding, of course. But we've got a few questions that have come in from our viewers on Facebook. Is it okay if we start firing a couple of those at you?
Yeah, for sure. I know a couple of these blokes, so we'll see how we go.
Well, we might start off with Matty then, mate. You got a question there for us?
I don't have anything related to that list we sent through before, but I just wanted to touch base on some of the campaigns and some of the coastal developments that you sort of proposed against. Can you list some of those? Can you talk through a couple of the developments that you've fought against and some of the causes that you support?
Right now, the main one has been this sort of perpetual campaign to put a cruise ship terminal on the Gold Coast. And as most people know, the cruise ships these days are absolutely enormous. They're floating cities. And putting that in anywhere is going to cause a lot of change, a lot of damage to the environment, and a lot of sort of impacts that go on. There's definitely some people here, the mayor, of course, and a lot of people behind him who want to see that happen. The first proposal, of course, was at the Gold Coast Seaway. It would have involved dredging the outer banks there perpetually, and everyone knows South Stratty, TOS. It would have just permanently ripped the heart out of the outer banks there and totally changed the way. There's 470 species of marine life that live along that rock wall there. It's probably the best inshore sort of dive site anywhere in Australia. So there's so many different factors there, and social amenity and environmental amenity and that go with it. So the impacts would have been massive. And these guys brought in huge firepower, massive developers that were backed by the Chinese state government. So these campaigns have been ongoing. Right now, it's an incarnation where they actually want to put it in the ocean off the spit, which we sort of laugh at when you think about the Pacific Ocean and off the east coast of Australia. Putting out a jetty and a rock wall out there sounds good, but there's no protection from the wind or the swells that wrap around in there. And the cost of it would be over $500 million. So it's quite hysterical, but unfortunately it doesn't go away. So that's still ongoing, and we're involved in a really big campaign. And part of that also is obviously you hate being political about it, but it's rooted in the politics. It's always around the council and the government. So we're constantly involved in that, lobbying, talking to the government, and actually doing a lot of their research for them so that those ministers know the impacts, know what's going on, and definitely can make an informed decision, because bad things happen when decisions are made without the information. So,
and I know one of the bands that you've shot is Suicidal Tendencies, and a lot of punk and hardcore bands. And you're not the only photographer that I know that has had some sort of, I guess, like a drive against the system, and it's kind of like a DIY punk mentality that's taken through art, and it can be through visual art, through, photography, a variety of different mediums. And you just happen to be a photographer who got, some sort of, moral code. And does your music interest cross over to your mentality when it comes to those social injustices?
Oh, definitely. Today I was listening to a rapper named Sevensy from up here on the Gold Coast, and I can't repeat much of the lyrics that were in that, but definitely along those lines. But what I think, it's not that the music seeks to be rebellious and go against things and be anarchist or any of those things. I think that punk music and those sort of types of music totally about freedom of expression. And the fact that most of the things around us in this world try to prevent that expression or control it or inhibit it or shape it, and the music goes to unleash it and give it no limits, is where that conflict and that clash comes in. So I think, from a young age, when you get together with your friends and you discover all this fantastic music that's about expressing yourself however you want to do it, that's ultimately going to lead you down the path to be listening to punk music and music with messages in it, and things like that. So, and
it's no no surprise you found your way through to surfing, because in places like the Gold Coast or here in Sydney, places like Southern California, which were hotbeds for that style of music, is also a huge hotbed for surfing as well. So, for example, during that punk movement of the 70s and 80s, was also a time when pro surfing was really starting to kick off, and a lot of surfers had that. Well, maybe not. They didn't have the social platforms that they do now, but I know now there's a lot of the surfers coming out of those areas that have got the similar mentality you speak about, and they're not afraid to put their hand up and represent a cause that they're proud to, be a part of. And I can just really see the photography and the surfing go hand in hand. I saw Joel Tilley, a photo of him that was just posted up, and Joel was one of those guys who just said it how it was. And he was a he basically was just a punk who rode a surfboard, really, you know, and it was surfing was his self-expression. You could see it in every turn and every heat he was in. His expression of who he was coming out in the water. And it's really nice that we all have that sort of creative outlet to release it.
Oh, for sure. You know, music, photography, surfing itself is an art of expression. Skateboarding as well. You know, it's the art of expression. And we all love to do those sort of things. And how you do it is up to you. And I certainly, you know, have made a big part of my life, and now my kids' life, of course, having the confidence to express yourselves however you want to do. So get out there, get in the water. Don't worry about what people say about your clothes or the style that you surf. Nobody cares, mate. You just do whatever you want to do. So,
thank goodness for that. So does that mean I don't have to keep hiding my bald head? I can get away with.
Well, it depends how much the wetsuit company paid you to put the hat on, mate.
Hey, I'll tell you what. Actually, pretty exciting news. I just little snippet. You know about the Corbett boys, Luke. So the Mick and Dan Corbett. Happy birthday for yesterday to the twins, West Australian Chargers, both. Riding for Volt wetsuits, of course. We'll be getting them on the show in a couple of weeks to talk about how a couple of junior longboarders turn into the most ridiculous charging hellmen on the planet. But I'm looking forward to speaking to them. Now, I actually was going to put a Soul Board Store hat on, but I couldn't find it. And I didn't want to show off my bald head. So there we go, the Volt hat won again. But listen, let's get on to some viewer questions, mate. So one of the first ones we received, and I kind of get the feeling there's a bit of an inside story to this, J-Mo Heron along the same mould, doesn't mind rolling a little bit different to other people. He's asked, can you ask Luke to tell the story of Big Wednesday washout set that rolled through Waimea Bay? What's he talking about?
Yeah, so I was in Hawaii when I was shooting some films for Chris Bystrom many years ago. Geez, that's probably 20-odd something years ago. And I was over there for a couple of months, staying right there on the North Shore. And you know, and I come out as a pretty young sort of go-getter guy. I got my camera gear. I'm over there. I'm like, I'm going to give it a go. I don't think I've ever seen waves like this before, though. And literally, like the biggest swell of 20 years turned up on our doorstep and washed out everything. Watching the guys surf the creek, you know, the inlet there at Haleiwa and all sorts of things. But on the peak of the days, jumped in the car with Bonga and Kanoa, and we went down to check out Waimea Bay. And I couldn't believe it, mate. It was actually, like, even when it's big, you know, we talk about the bay closing out. But it wasn't just closing out. It was actually starting way out as a left-hander and breaking across the bay as a left before it even got to the Outer Banks where it would close out. And it's just the way it shook the ground. I mean, they've got boulders out there as big as half a house that sit out there, the back of those things. And you could feel the earth shaking. I mean, they were just like moving around and banging against each other. And and it was just absolutely surreal. And the reason you can sort of gauge how big it is when the lip goes, the time it takes for that lip to fly out forward, come down, and actually get to the trough of the wave, it's like an eternity. And I couldn't imagine being anybody stuck in one of these things. So they were going to run the eddy. They were thinking of run the eddy. So we've got these guys all lined up on the beach, you know, and jet skis going in and out sort of thing. And all of a sudden, someone comes over a loudspeaker, one of the lifeguards, oh, bro, you know, screaming at everybody, get off the beach. So people were running up into the hills and all sorts of places. And these jet skis just barreling out there for the horizon, flat stick. And I think they just got out over the back of this set. And this thing washed straight through, didn't even reform in the shore break, went up the beach and actually broke into the lagoon, which a lot of the old guys there were saying they've pretty much never seen. And for me, coming straight from the Gold Coast, being a young bloke, that was just something that I'll always remember. And just, I've never seen footage like it. So I haven't seen anything like it since. So, and that was my sort of welcome to Hawaii.
What have I done? Well, that probably brings us.
Luke, I was going to ask you, were you planning on swimming out at Waimea that day? If they ran it?
No. You know, it's a tough place to swim. You know, I grew up on the beach breaks here, and they're definitely tough in their own way. But the water moves differently over there, and I certainly got that on the first day. Plenty of jet lag, straight swim out at pipe, straight round the back door. You know, it's not too big. It's like, you know, 6 foot, 5 foot. I'm shooting and Bonga paddles past. He goes, "Hey, Luke, what you doing in here?" I said, "Mate, I'm all right. I know what I'm doing." He's looking at me, sort of shaking his head and sort of a new swell was coming, and sort of 5 minutes later, you know, all the surfers disappear to the horizon. The horizon disappears, it all goes black, and next thing I'm standing on the reef at Backdoor in about 3.5 feet of water, just waiting for my desserts. And sure enough, I just got absolutely donated, landed on my backside on the reef, washed up onto the beach. I thought, that's it, I'll go and have a sleep.
Oh, crap. We actually had a viewer question from down near my neck of the woods in Geelong from Happy Hippos Creative, just asking what the riskiest situation you've had to put yourself in to get a shot. Would pipe be one of those, or?
No, maybe not really. I mean, it wasn't that ferocious. For me, it was a little bit of a new experience, but there's definitely way more gnarly situations. And I guess you say, when he says in the question that you've put yourself in, a lot of times you don't deliberately mean to put yourself in these positions. You go into it thinking, I'm just going to skirt the edge, try and get a shot and get out of the way. And quite often you can get sucked into a rip and sucked into a situation on a reef or on a beach break where all of a sudden you are in trouble. But, you know, it's the most dangerous thing when you're shooting is other people, obviously, boards and craft, and particularly on the Gold Coast. Even when you go out there and find a bit of a place to yourself, you've got your one or two surfers, you're always going to have people paddling out and surfing, people from behind, inexperienced surfers, people riding logs with no leashes, all those sort of things. And I think going out at a place like Snapper, trying to get in there and shoot in a crowd, getting right on the ledge along some of those point breaks when it's really crowded is probably the most dangerous thing, worse than big waves, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Well, actually, Riley, I think one of our West Aussie viewers had a question relating.
Yeah. Yeah, Glenn Solomon had a question. Have you had any close calls with vessels, and how do you make sure you don't get sliced and diced? So what are your thoughts on that, Luke?
Yeah, I've had a few close shaves, like literally. Longboarding's very different when you shoot in the water. Straight away, even on a high performance longboard, of course, the fins are bigger, the board's bigger and heavier. The surfer still has less control over the board. So even with a professional surfer, the chances of you getting hit can be really high. And I love to shoot fisheye and those sort of lenses where you've got to get up close. I remember we were down at Green Island, down on the south coast of New South Wales once, and it was a late afternoon. If anyone surfed there, you probably know there's kelp and all sorts of things there, and it's super sharky. And we're out shooting 2 or 3 feet, beautiful left point. And I remember staying up, you know, above the water for a bit, and it was, who was it? I can't even remember. I think it was Jai was surfing. And as he's nose riding across in front of me, his tails come spinning straight out under the lip. And I'm like this, and I've copped the 2+1 straight into my face under the lip. Wow. And, you know, just an almighty crunching bang and sort of things fly. And I came up and used my housing like a mirror to have a look, and I sort of had cuts across my face, a bit of a shiner, and this big hole in my chin. And, of course, the blood was just sort of bubbling out of my chin in the water. Right. But the waves were so good, like so beautiful, and the sun was setting. And I thought, well, you know, bugger it. We've only got, you know, not that much longer. So I stayed out there and shot for another 20, 25 minutes while the light was good, and then came out into the beach. And I probably should have gone and got a bunch of stitches, you know, but we were on the surf trip miles from anywhere. So I sort of just stuffed some gauze in there and away you go and keep going. And now anytime I shave, it's a nice little reminder, a little like L-shaped hole in my chin down here. So
just while we're on that, you've actually got a photo in the background there of someone doing a helicopter, you know, the tails sliding out there.
Oh, yeah, that's Heath Norris there, Snozzer.
I was going to ask, what trip were you on with Jai Burns, I'm assuming, down south?
Yes, Burnsy, yes. We were shooting for Living Long, the film Living Long. Yep. That's right, for Chris Bosch's film. Actually, when I came in, Chris was carrying on like a pork chop to me about why would I stay out in the water when I'm pouring blood and this is the top 10 tiger shark fishing places or something or other. He thought I was crazy, and I just said, mate, just remember that when you sign the checks, eh?
That's really fitting that you're in right now, straight after we've just had JB, who took over PLB after you know, Bystrom, and I've got all of Bystrom's old movies and
great,
got the whole collection. So that's pretty cool. We've got for any viewers out there that are listening and watching this, we talk about these puzzles that help make longboarding what it is today. And, you know, magazines and photos, movies, they're all a big part of that story that, you know, it's storytelling. That's what photos are. And, I guess that you are a big part of that, documenting a lot of the Gold Coast surfers. You said Heath Norris. Heath was one of my favourite surfers who blended. There's also that talk these days, no, it's always happened, progressive and traditional surfers like Heath Norris always blended both. And with guys like that, they're good surfers. You don't have to box them into anything, they are just good surfers. So, can you as a photographer's perspective see that when you shoot someone like Heath? Can you just go, or Jai Burns, you just go, wow, they're just talented, and whatever they're on?
Absolutely, straight away, without a shadow of a doubt, you can tell exactly what caliber of surfer you got in the water. Even before you get in the water and you talk about, we're going to go out and shoot some photos or video, where we're going to surf, what we're going to do, how it's going to go down. Surfing to get photos and to get footage is very different to surfing for yourself. And you can tell when you're working with a professional who's going to go out there. Heath's an enigma, mate. He's one of those surfers. I mean, he has his days, but when he's on, he's absolutely on. He's one of those surfers that very quiet, unassuming, does a lot of his expression with his surfing, and he certainly can do some amazing things. So, and a great loyal friend as well. And that's an important part of it too. I mean, there's some surfers out there that I've gone and shot before. Great surfers, but if you're not bringing that sort of vibe where everyone's together and friendly and things, well, that's going to show as well, and you're not going to get a call back. So, yeah, but Heath's great. So, but definitely the caliber of surfer makes a difference. And when you trust a surfer, you can go in the water, you can put on a fisheye lens and go and shoot some amazing stuff, and know that when you turn your head to the side, they're just going to whip past your ear, not a problem. So.
And one of our listeners, Jane, wrote a question. She asked if you surf as well, and what's your favourite part and worst part about surf photography?
Yeah, definitely. I've surfed, all of my life. A lot less now. I'm more of a parent, a lot of sports and kids and things like that. So definitely, I do like to get out in the water. But I remember in my 20s, I probably surfed 4 times a day. I think I was on the John Howard surf team for a while there. So that certainly helps you get a lot of surfing done. But you get it to shoot surfing. I think you have to at least have some measure of surfing yourself to understand it from the other side as well. A lot of people are very passionate and go and take photos of surfing, but if they've never ridden a wave, it makes it difficult for them to be able to translate those sort of things. I definitely like riding longboards, and it was actually, I grew up riding all sorts of big boards and whatever, my parents could get their hands on, whatever they found at the tip, we rode that as kids. But it was Chris Bystrom that really turned me on to that resurgence of modern longboarding. And it was a funny story because I was working in a pizza shop. I'd been, shooting video of surfing for a few years and really building my own housings and doing things. And just by chance, he happened to walk into the shop one day on the way home and order a pizza. And we got talking and I brought down my little tape, my reel, and I said, mate, I'm into it. I'm really keen. I know you make films. Showed him the 3-minute reel, and his first words were, "You're hired for life." and he meant it, and it pretty much stuck to the end too. And we certainly butted heads. Chris was a very different person, and he certainly was a strong personality, and we butted heads many a times. But he was very generous and supportive, and he really opened my eyes to what longboarding had become in the modern era. And where it was heading and what we could do. And I mean, that time in the late 90s there, it was huge. And it was so much fun going up to Noosa to the comps, going and seeing all the touring surfers, learning all this wonderful history and getting, entrenched in longboarding as a surfer as much as it was a photographer. And myself learning how to ride a single fin log, coming from riding all sorts of different things, bodyboarding and shortboards. So that was really a great eye-opener, and I've stuck with it since. So as much as I like all sorts of surfing, I love looking at traditional longboarding, and I love the culture that goes with it. So,
hey, we've got a quick question, Luke, coming in from a very talented surfer and Clinton guest. Just wanted to know, being a North End local, what your best memories of South Stratty and North End are.
Oh, wouldn't he like to know? Yeah, it is. That's a very special thing, They built that seaway in the mid-1980s, and just as I was coming into my teenage years. And thankfully, my older brother and a few of the crew were switched on, and we, heard about how the waves were starting to change over there. So we started going over there. I remember there were days when, I'd be at high school, and they'd call me up to the office, Luke Sorensen, go to the office. Look, geez, what have I done now, And I get to the office and there's my brother with a bit of a cheeky smile, and he's just got his car, you know, and he's like, "Oh, you've got that appointment, mate, you know, the appointment." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, the appointment." And off we'd go, mate. You know, we'd paddle over for the afternoon, all day westerlies, and the waves were just, I mean, they're like they are today. They were probably better, I mean, before it all groomed out. They would come in so hard and just peak and pipe left and right on the sand. And there were afternoons there where there'd be less than 10 people and you'd have it for hours and hours and hours. And that went on for quite a few years. And slowly, you know, the guys doing the surf reports tried not to name it or locate it, but, you know, a few photos started getting out, and just, it doesn't take too long. And eventually the crowds come. And now it's really sad. I go over there and I almost don't want to surf there because of how many people are there. And that just comes with the territory. I mean, surfing is popular and more people are going to do it. And you can't stop that. So, but it is sad when I go over there sometimes and I look up that beach and I see 300 or 400 heads in the water where there used to be 3 or 4 or 10. And it's just, you know, but yeah, those years we really had something special there. Particularly the local bodyboarding crew as well that were there. And we all remain friends today. Anybody who surfed it in that era automatically sort of comes part of this unwritten club. Oh yeah, and then you can. So we stay friends, and we have reunions every now and then with the bodyboarding crew and stuff. So it's yeah, it was something. As a man-made waves goes, you don't come much better.
Yeah, for sure. Dan, we had a question also from Dan Proctor asking what your favourite spot to shoot is. Where's your favourite spot?
Well, we just talked about it, didn't we?
Yeah.
Look, I love all of the Gold Coast, but definitely Stratty's, you know, one of those places. When I first started shooting, that's where we wanted to go. You know, going to D-Bar was okay, but the current was strong and the locals were angry and you know, they'd hold the grommies underwater and do all sorts of things. So it was a pretty intimidating place to go. Going to Stratty was sort of our place, you know, and that's my home. And to shoot, you know, there's not much better beach breaks. When it's up to 6 feet, it's not super demanding. You can just jump right in, swim right out. As long as you stay away from the lip, you can get stuck and locked into some really intense barrels. In fact, this one right here, that's Stratty there one afternoon. And so many great photos there. So, but you know, over the time, word gets out, and next thing you know, it's sometimes difficult to shoot because you're looking up at your guy coming, and in the corner of your eye, here comes one paddling, here comes another paddling, here comes another. So, you know, it's one of those things. But yeah, definitely Stratty's my favourite place to shoot.
Yeah, epic, man. Epic.
Big Sean, let's get into more the technicality side of things.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got this question from Tony Bird. You might know Tony. His kids play soccer, same age groups as yours.
Okay, yep.
Yep. Anyway, Birdman wants to know a technical thing about what's the best editing software, as he's been told that apps that he uses affect the quality of the picture afterwards.
Yeah, that's really something interesting. Apps for editing your photos are the same as your camera gear, the same as surfboards for most people. It's always has to factor in your budget, one, and two, what's the purpose of what you're doing? If you're making pictures for Instagram and you're not printing them any big, you don't need expensive apps to tinker with it. And the modern stuff's getting better and better now that some of these smaller apps can do some amazing things. But obviously, if you're taking it one step further and you're hoping to submit your photos to a magazine or print them up very large on canvas, you're going to want something good. At the moment, I use mostly Adobe Photoshop. It's like Lightroom, but it's got a lot more features and power packed into it. But I'm actually exploring at the moment. There's a whole new world of apps coming out that are genuinely using artificial intelligence to couple with those powerful photo editing tools. So things like in the past when we enlarged a picture or wanted to blow it up, we couldn't really generate new pixels or create new information. So as a result, it would blur. But now there's actual apps out there that can generate new pixels. And these apps learn and constantly learn different images. And that's one example of where it's going. And I'm really enjoying investigating some of those things, what we can do. And also some of the other things is take old JPEGs, compressed images, and actually restore them back to a higher quality raw image so we can do a lot more in the edit room. But at the end of the day, nothing substitutes from taking the good photo the first time. So I say to people, you know, if you're looking at surf photography from a sort of beginner's stage or taking it another step, I'd be concentrating on my camera settings, my composition, the way I understand light. All of these things you can't substitute for that with editing software at all. So
we are very lucky these days, though, having obviously access to things like YouTube, Luke. Obviously, when you started, you'd take the photos, wait till you filled up the roll, send it off for processing, and wait a couple of weeks for it to come back. How much of a difference has it made, do you think, this whole digital revolution? Every man and his dog seems to have a half-decent digital SLR.
Yeah, it is difficult. I mean, reasonably, like okay surf photos are a dime a dozen now. That's flooded. Anybody can get a bit of expensive gear, go down, start pointing it at surfing, hit auto, and just barrel off 1,000 photos. And in that's going to be some good photos. And I must admit myself, sometimes I'm the same. I'll turn up at a contest, just sit there and blast away on it, and think later on I'll go and just look through my roll on my screen and pick out what's good. So if anything, it's probably taken away from the art of photography a lot for a lot of people. People are getting into photography, but they're not learning the art of it. And like I've got an example, my 9-year-old son, he's just started taking surf photos and things, taking an interest. So I've given him an old Canon DSLR, but I'm sticking it on single shot mode. I'm sticking it on manual, and I'm giving it to him and talking to him about looking for the moment, looking for that exact shot, forgetting what powerful equipment can do, what all this 10 frames a second can do, autofocus and magical stuff. Go back to the basics and learn how to shoot. Then you'll get a lot more out of your fancy technical gear. But the stuff they're pumping out today, I've got some stuff here actually that I've just brought. A lot of, in the old days, if you wanted to shoot from the beach, you had to go and save up many thousands of dollars to get a half decent lens, and then still hope that it worked when you pointed it. So nowadays you can get something like this one here, which is the Sigma. So that's up to 600mm lens, and they retail for about $1,200, which is really not that much in the scheme of it. But if you get that onto a decent body, you can take some incredible surf photos with something like that without breaking the bank. Pretty amazing sort of stuff. Another one that I've got here that I'm toying with at the moment is the I'll put it over here, is the GoPro Dome. So in the old days, again, buying a dome port and getting a decent housing with an SLR could have set you back many thousands of dollars. These things here go for about $100 on eBay, and if you put a GoPro 7 or 8 in it, you'll be really surprised with what you can produce out of it, and certainly, not at all breaking the bank. And these things can shoot phenomenal video, phenomenal still photos, and all sorts of environments. So there's no limit to what the average person can produce these days, and it's exciting to see that people aren't limited by that budget. You can go and explore, proper surf photography now, whereas it used to be quite an exclusive club.
Yeah, for sure. Is that photo behind your parko, Luke?
Yes, on a single fin at the Burleigh single fin comp. He shreds on it. Yeah.
Such a good pick.
Yeah. No, he's won it a couple of times, and he's got a good board. It's a hot stuff. But yeah, when he gets out there, there's no difference. Thruster or single fin doesn't change for him. So
yeah, good. We got the twins.
Now, I'm going to jump in on you there, boys, because we've just been joined by the supermodel himself, Chris. Jack.
Hey, guys. Good, thanks. How are you guys?
Very well, thanks, mate. Thanks for taking a few minutes out. I know you're in the middle of doing work, but we really wanted you to be on board tonight, and thanks for taking some time to throw a few questions at Luke for us.
No worries. Good to see you, Luke.
hey, Jack.
How you going, mate?
Good, mate.
Hey, one question I did have was, obviously, cameras and equipment these days are pretty easy to get, and I guess somewhat reasonably priced. For guys that are coming, into wanting to, kind of pursue photography, as a younger, grommet that's wanting to shoot surfing and stuff, is it an easy kind of path for them to go down? Obviously Instagram and all that's, where a lot of people post all their content, straight after a session.
Yep.
What's it like for, young people that are wanting to be photographers, I guess, and choose it as a career path?
I think it's more difficult now than ever, being that we're saturated with really good content. Everybody is. And it's the same problem, JB, you guys probably discussed last week with the magazines, how to compete in a world where people are just instantly gratified with a saturation of good quality content, whether it's surfing, whatever, that we can open our phones and have a virtual flick through hundreds of really good surf images. As a young photographer, trying to find a space in that and have your photos seen or recognised is extremely difficult to, and I don't think I'd love to start from the bottom right now.
Yeah.
But that being said, what that does is it shows that photography and surf photography has to be a passion for a person. It has to be a labour of love. You cannot go in there as a young person and think, I'm going to make a career out of this. There's a great myth, that all these surf photographers make a career. But the truth is very few have made an absolute career out of doing it. And almost all of them do other work on the side. Dispelling that myth and getting into your surf photography as a passion, and putting yourself out there and saying, you know what, if I don't sell any images or don't get any return out of this, I'm going to keep doing it and not get disheartened. I think it's the most important thing a young person getting into it needs to do, and not have an expectation that they're going to suddenly take one good photo and be sent off on a surf trip with a surf magazine. It's very difficult at the moment, and I find there's more money in surfing, but it's far more dispersed at the moment. There used to be a lot of, a short list of photographers making all the money and a short list of magazines making all the money. That's been spread far and thin at the moment. And as we see, some photographers give up, magazines fold. It's a tough world. I wouldn't want to start from the bottom, mate. So, but that being said, definitely, if you're going to do it, make sure you love it. And no matter what happens, it's that love that you go after first, and the rest of it is a bonus.
Yeah, totally. Kind of couldn't agree more. I guess you just got to find your niche, or your style and your creativity, and just make sure that more than anything you're enjoying what you do, and just post what you do, and if that's what makes you happy, and I guess the rest is a bonus. Definitely.
And like you said about the niche, I think that's more important today now than ever as well. I love to not have a niche. I like to try and do as many things. I see someone take a surface photo and I think I can take one like that or better than that, and have a lot of tricks in my bag. But in today's world where it's saturated and there's so many photographers, I think the ones that do the best are those that get a style. They stick with certain style of colours. They stick with a certain style of shooting, and really focus on that and create a portfolio based around that. And they are standing out. They stand out more on Instagram. They get more followers. I like Instagram and I hate it, but at the same time, I'm not going to go chasing people and change what I do now. But if I was starting new, definitely I'd try and create a real niche style and get very good at it and be known for it. Yeah.
Just to interrupt there on the back of your question, Jack, another, I guess, with social media, and I guess another avenue I've seen a lot of photographers take is people want that, brands want that constant reception of the customer. They want people to be remembered. So there is that need for content creation. I mean, even with me, when I'm not traveling surfing, I actually run a car restoration business here in Brookvale, and we're doing, 500-600 hour jobs on cars. And I've just got my iPhone, I'm snapping away and I post them up on social media, and I can use that image to send to the customer. But it's difficult to get action shots that are usable. You need to still have that eye with the light, and the sparks going everywhere. Yeah. And, even I am paying a photographer to get some of those shots, so I don't have to worry about it. My customers will get good quality content. They may get a photo that's worth, framing or something during the process. And I know shapers are the same. You see a lot of surfboard shapers who have got these really good images of them in the bay, but you wouldn't necessarily have those back in the 70s and 80s unless you were like a Terry Fitzgerald or a Simon Anderson. So I must say, although magazines and prints sort of going downwards, they are smart, and I guess they do have that niche, or not the niche, their aesthetic, there can be a little side market there if they've got their eyes open.
Oh, definitely. Look, there's, and even for myself as well. I get up one day and think, I'm not making any money from surf photography. And next day the phone rings and I'm making money again from it. It comes and it goes. But as far as a steady stream, it's very difficult, obviously. And you're working for yourself. Definitely, if you take good photos, there's going to always be people that are interested in it. Whether they're paying, just paying you rent, or whether they're paying you rent and then some. You talk about car restoration and businesses, people's passions. People pay for their passions. They always do. So, but I'm sure that whatever you pay the photographers, you sort of tend to pass on that to your clients, the cost. So it becomes a factor of your business as well. So, yeah, definitely there's all sorts of things. And for me, doing commercial work, which is what a lot of surf photographers do, is what you end up doing on your side. A lot of people do weddings. A lot of people do events and functions. A lot of people I know do product photos. There's a big market for people who sell stuff online now to get the right photo of their product. Setting up the right white walls and the right lighting and things can get you a lot of money, so that you can then go and pursue your passion in surf photography. So when I say don't think that you're going to instantly, go after this career in surf photography and get it. Of course you can, but be ready to do other photography jobs and sometimes photograph things that you don't like. After about 3 or 4 weddings, they generally get, they can be very challenging and not that fun. They can be financially rewarding, but they're one of those things, another example of what people do to get by. I do portraits for families who just rock up and say, look, we want you for an hour to come down to the park with our family and take those sort of photos that are going to be with us for the rest of their lives. Happy to do it, and if that puts some more money in the tank, then do it. So taking that approach to your photography is a great way to stay in surf photography by diversifying what you can do, yeah.
I think as well, a lot of people need to remember, as someone who's been paid to take photos, and I also pay people to take photos for me, is you're not paying for those hours, you're paying for the years and years worth of experience so that you actually get the correct photo. You're almost paying for the photos they don't take to a certain extent. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I had it the other day. I've been doing a lot of photos for the soccer clubs, of course, and I had one of the parents come up to me and he said, I saw your photos, mate, so good. He goes, you must have the best camera ever. And I had a beauty. And normally I'm not that sort of quick, but I turned around and I said, mate, when you go to the art gallery and you see the best painting, do you automatically assume that it's a great painting because the artist had an expensive brush?
Yeah.
And he sort of looked at me like this and went, ooh, like this. And I'm like, exactly, mate. So
I've had people say, oh, why don't you just come to our wedding and take photos? Why don't you just come? It's like, oh, why don't you come paint my wall? But
yeah.
One of my favourite comebacks with that was, someone will say, oh, gee, you take really great photos. You must have a good camera. If they ever cook you a good meal, you say, gee, that meal was delicious. You must have a good oven. But
yeah. No, it's full on. And look, people will always try and take advantage of you when you've got an art. They think because you enjoy your photography that it's free. They think that because you love doing it and you're good at it, that you're just going to do it for other people. And they will try and always get something free or offer you that fantastic currency exposure. Definitely exposure is cool if it's your first day on the job. But after that, I tried to pay my rent. I said, here's 20 exposures, you wouldn't take it. So definitely, people are going to try and do those sort of things. But I always say, even if it's a token gesture, it's important that people who have an art or a talent make sure that they get something for it when they do it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking at your work, you can see you're worth every cent. Sorry, Sean, mate. I know that Jack messaged me off camera to say he's only got 5 or 10 minutes. So, Jack, can we get another question in out of you, mate, before you have to shoot off?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have asked it yet, but I was kind of thinking, when people go on surf trips and, especially to destinations that are, kind of heavily, secret or, you go to spots that people, don't like you shooting and posting on Instagram and tagging the location and that sort of thing. What are your tips, or not tips, but what do you think about people tagging, certain secret spots and that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. And even before social media, it's like, is it going to get written up in the magazine? Are people just going to talk about it? And it's a really sensitive issue for a lot of places around the world. And thankfully it still is. There are still a lot of places, I wouldn't call them secret, but they're small, they're localized, they belong to those people that live there. And it's really important. And I'm a firm believer that you work hard to protect that and respect the locals that have grown up there. They could be multi-generations of families that have surfed and fished in that area. And the last thing you want is a bunch of Instagram hunters turning up on their doorstep because of one post. I know today people love to get their work out fast and post stuff and say, this was an hour ago, you know, here or there. I like to sit on photos for a while, wait till it's flat and rainy, and post them and not actually put the location in and leave people guessing. Was that today? Was it yesterday? Where was it? That mystery is certainly a part of surfing, I think, that's lost a little bit these days. You know, we grew up as kids, you'd see a photo in a magazine and you just dream of where it might be or how to get to this place. And that dream in itself is for me, part of that surfing experience and the imagination of all these places. If everything was named and everything was hashtagged, we'd lose that sense of adventure. People wouldn't just stumble upon waves or go on a trip. So, you know, when we turn up with camera gear and we want to shoot a place, if there's people that are looking at us funny or saying things, you know, try to go and talk to them, try and engage with them, talk to them, let them know, hey, we're not here to rob you of anything. We're not here to name your surf breaks. I know some people in the past have even flipped their photos to try and protect breaks and stuff. It's the old way of doing it. But yeah, I've had a few run-ins over the years. We've shared things I can't mention, given offerings to these locals and said, hey, look, we're not like that. We're going to look after you. But it always is going to be a problem because you do it and then you get really upset because the next guy comes along and he doesn't do it. And it's really a bummer. So around the Gold Coast, we don't have that problem. Everyone knows where everything is now. You don't have to put a name on it. But yeah, you know, like I went to a Point Break that's probably just a few hours south of here. Been down there a few times. The waves are amazing. And some days you go down there and it's as good as Snapper or better. And there's two guys out. You know, why would I go and name that now and hashtag it and have 150 people from Snapper go, oh, 2 hours, I'm driving down there. No way. You know, we wait our turn, we sit on the rocks, everybody takes turns, you paddle out and have your half an hour, get in, don't name it, don't publish it straight away, don't publish the back of the cliff where people can identify it. I think it's really important,
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for that.
Yeah, there's an ongoing battle here in Perth. People just lie. They just say it's where it wasn't. But I've got the last two of the viewer questions that were submitted before going to air today. I think this one's probably the most important one, Luke. This is from Link Finkler Hillard. He says, undies or free ball?
Ooh, tough question, Linky. Say hey to Lincoln. Yeah, I know Lincoln. Lincoln is actually one of those original Stratty boys who I grew up with. So, you know, and definitely going to Stratty is one of those free balling kind of experiences. I would have to say, you know, in a wetsuit, free balling for sure. But in the boardies, you've got to be a little bit careful. That's your only lifeline you've got there. And one good lip down the spine, it's nice to have a backup and a little extra bit on there. So
from the jellyfish as well. And probably on a more serious note, from a good friend of mine, Terry Trayton. In fact, he took this picture of me right here at a certain unnamed break to the north of Perth. But Terry Trayton asked, what inspires you? We've kind of touched on it, but if you could give it to us in a little parcel, what inspires you as a photographer, Luke?
Yeah, as a photographer, tough one. I've said obviously the ocean, you know, got me from a very young age in every single aspect. So I scuba dive and I snorkel and I do all sorts of things, anything to get in and around the ocean definitely inspires me. But also history actually inspires me. And that's something I also, you know, learnt a lot from Chris Bystrom as well, is, you know, the idea that things aren't all, you know, from the now and then they're gone. Looking back at our history and that storytelling, being able to connect it to our future and to our present and doing it through things like photography is absolutely something that's always inspired me. And it's a big part of the work that I'm doing away from surf photography with my wife at the moment as well. I love to connect those pathways and be able to connect generations of people together so that young people can have an affinity with the older generations and the older generations can have an understanding with the younger people as well. And I think surf photography and storytelling that comes with it is a great medium and a great way to do that. And that inspires me every day of the week. Great
question. Great answer, mate. And thanks for that question from Tel. He's an interesting character as well. And you meet all sorts of photographers. Riley, I think you had a question that Fenner was going to ask there somewhere. I think, I missed one.
I think that was the question about the vessels, but I think that one's already been answered. I can throw another one at you, Luke.
Jeff Sullivan has got a question for you.
I'd love to know, have you entered into any competitions or won any competitions? And I ask this because when I was about 16, I got a GoPro, a Hero 4 Silver, I think it was at the time. And I took it down to the beach, just like you're saying, I snapped a picture. I don't think it was burst. I think it was just single frame. And it's actually this one right here. So you can be the judge of that one for you. But yeah, I entered into a comp and did well. But yeah, I was just wondering if you've entered into any comps or won any.
Yeah, I've plenty, mate, plenty. So I've entered in not so much surfing-based ones, but the more serious regional media awards that we'd have down here, and take on the professional photographers from time to time. So, you know, I don't want to say too much, but yeah, I've won a bunch of awards. Probably the best one was in 2015. I won the Media Excellence Award here at the Gold Coast Media Awards, and that's basically the Journalist of the Year on the Gold Coast. So, and I'm the only freelancer to have ever won that. And I've won multiple awards for sports photography, for lifestyle photography, for writing as well, and connecting all those passions together. But at the end of the day, it's great to have peer recognition and great to get a nice shiny trophy and all those sort of things. But the satisfaction for me still remains in my own work itself. You know, so I think, look, awards are great, but I don't think they're the be all and end all. I'm not saying I didn't earn, you know, and win my awards that I've won, but I always look out there and I think there's 1,000 better photographers than me out there all the time. I'm in awe of some of the photographers, and particularly on the Gold Coast. You know, I grew up around some of the absolute best surf photographers in the world, and on that, I just want to say a big thanks. It's hard. And a shout out to Marty Tullermans, who's not doing so well. And he's one of the guys who really, you know, took time for me when I was little, gave me good advice, and always was encouraging for me when I started out. So, yeah.
Good on you, mate. And best wishes for Marty. He's a strange character, but he's got a heart of gold and a wealth of wisdom as well. Now, I know Jack, I think, has to shoot off, but I want to stay around for a couple more minutes. So maybe if we can thank Jack for joining us for those few minutes. I appreciate you squeezing us in between work.
Sorry. Thanks, guys. Yeah, nice to chat to you, mate. Thanks for the insight. Yeah, I've got to get back to work, but I'll leave you.
All right, thanks, Jack.
Good on you, Jack. Much appreciated. So, obviously, you've but you've obviously spoken earlier on about Chris Bystrom, and can I put you on the spot? You did mention to me privately, I hope it's okay to share, that you're actually putting together some of that 20-year-old footage of that road trip you were telling me.
Yeah, so basically, you know, when Chris passed away, it was very sudden and shocking, and you know, it hit everybody really hard. Obviously, no one more so than his son. But we had started work on a fifth film, and we'd spoken briefly about it, and I'd actually gone out and started shooting a bunch of stuff towards that film. And some of that stuff sort of has been released in bits and pieces over the years, but a lot of it sort of also sat just on tapes and things like that. So some great little trips that we did just up and down the coast here, mostly with some really fantastic surfers like CJ Nelson and Jimmy Gamboa and Schnozzer, of course, you know, a lot of footage of him that's never been seen. So even though it's 20 years old, I've started sort of throwing it together into the editing suite, you know, not with a view of pushing out a film commercially, but just putting it together into a video and just getting it out there for people to have a look at. Some of the surfing has changed over the years, but it was a very special time, like I said, at the end of the 90s there, where longboarding was very popular and there was great resurgence in it, and definitely everybody was keen to get on a trip and surf. So I'm putting it together and making that film, and I'm about 3/4 of the way through it now, and I'm just going to put that out there, mates, on like Vimeo or something like that for everybody to see, and I really hope they enjoy it. You know, it's not designed as a film to go and compete against modern camera gear and other people who are making films at the moment. But again, it's just my way of connecting that story and pulling that history forward and sharing it with some new people that might not have seen these guys surf. Hopefully everybody enjoys it. Hopefully JB will give us a plug and promote it. I'm sure he will, if I can just flick it over to him and say, mate, this is yours. You can pump it out if you like. So yeah, looking forward to that. And hopefully before the end of the year, we'll definitely have that out. So.
Unreal, and obviously we'll do what we can to share it here on Oz Longboarding as well. It'd be good to have little premiere for you, because I'm sure I know I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
Likewise.
Yeah. That'd be
no.
Hey, Luke, my go-to question is, who is the best longboard surfer you've seen? And don't tell me Snozzer.
no.
He
Look,
was
like
around
I said,
the other day, that's all.
Snozzer on his day surfs really good, and he's a great surfer. He's got a great instinct for waves, and he charges. A lot of people don't know how hard he actually charges in waves. But over the years, it depends on. Look, you can't just say who's the best longboarder to shoot, because there's the different styles. Longboarding itself is so diverse. If I was going to go and shoot a more traditional style longboarding, I'd have to say CJ Nelson. I really enjoy. He's one of my best mates in surfing. He's an incredible surfer, and he is one of those people who is absolutely connected to that history and that style. And he lives and breathes it when he's on a surfboard. Whether you're talking to him on the beach or getting out in the water, he really, and when you shoot that, obviously that shines through. He brings forward so many elements of the earlier longboarding and totally just stomps them right in the here and now. And that's something that I think is really special. And it's great to film and photograph, of course. But I think as far as pure performance on a longboard, I definitely say the things I've seen Bonga Perkins do in big and small waves. I think he's the Mike Stewart of longboarding. The things he can do in big waves and small waves, and the diversity of what I've seen him do on waves is just phenomenal. He's like a rock, mate. He just, when he decides he wants to get in the barrel or go over the top, he's just going, and there's not many people in the world can do it like him. So.
I don't know, a lot of the Aussie crew have spent a lot of time with Bonga, have a heap of respect for him. I'm not sure if we covered Jeff Summerhaze's question. What is your favourite photo you've ever taken? I know it's a bit of a tough one. People ask me that sort of thing, and I guess it probably changes from time to time. Have you got an answer for that?
Yeah, I can't really say there's exactly a favourite photo. But, for me, it's pictures that I take of my family right when they're in a special moment, whether it's my son or my father and my grandfather catching up together, whether it's things like that. When you really nail one of those photos, that's not just a great photo, but it actually then relates directly to you. It's part of your heart. I think that's the best reward, and that's the greatest photo you can take. But obviously, this is a longboarding, a surfing show. Look, there's no one great photo that I've taken in surfing. But what I love to shoot predominantly, and I get the most thrill out of looking back at the photos, are those fisheye moments. The idea that you can get a photo and you're 12 inches away from a surfer in the most critical part of the wave, in a barrel, and doing those things. And it all came down to that one split-second moment, and you've worked and worked and worked so hard to be right there in that spot. I think that's the most rewarding, and those photos for me are the greatest photos.
Have you got the access on your computer now to that shot where you're basically underneath the nose of that green board?
No, I don't, but I could probably post it up in the Facebook afterwards, yeah.
That's cool, mate, because it almost looks like the board reverse bends back the other way. You're actually underneath the board. So that'd be great if you could share a couple of your shots to our Facebook page. That'd be much appreciated. And for our photo competition winners, contestants, we've had a lot of entries. We were going to discuss it tonight, but of course we've had far more interesting things to talk about. Don't panic, we do have an Instagram page now, thanks to young Nath. He's leading charge on the technology front. But you may have seen my little video with the camera bag that we've got here for someone to look at. We might even get you involved in helping us judge that, so we'll start going through that.
Yeah, no, I'll throw my 2 bits in, no problem, mate, so definitely. And if anyone's out there, jump on wherever my thing is there, my Instagram, wherever it is. Oh, there it is. Yeah, go check it out. It's not a very serious one. Again, I don't take it too seriously. I just post pictures for a bit of fun and just hope people enjoy it. So, positive place to share positive vibes. If you've got negative things, don't come on my Instagram, hey?
There's some beautiful photos on there. And actually, I must mention my beautiful girlfriend, Amanda. She basically reckons you're the man responsible for getting the two of us together, because there was a black and white photo you took of me at the Australian Longboard Open, which I used on my online dating profile.
Right.
No way.
Well, speaking of which, just hold on a second. I did put together a little 2-minute reel of some of those portraits here.
Oh, they were brilliant.
And so we'll wrap up by going through a few of these portraits. And I'll tell you, this is something that's not new to me. Obviously, I've been taking pictures of people for a long time, but more recently, I've fallen in love with black and white portraits, and in particular, taking them, right intimately up in people's faces. I think there's a candid sort of, reveal that you can get out of people when you get right up in their face like that. And you poke them a little bit and get a bit of a reaction, or ask them something really, to heart, and then you can capture that look on their face, and it's become, look, there's Michael there,
That captures Claudia so perfectly, like the gentle love,
looking into his soul.
Absolutely, and he's a very soulful person, and sometimes it's hard to capture. I know he works very hard to present himself as Michael, but so there's Mitchell. He's got the biggest smile I think of anyone I've seen down at your comp there, Sean.
Or is that just how big Mitch's smile is?
That's just how happy that he's stoked, mate. I'm like, you come first or fourth, and fourth doesn't matter. He's got the same smile, mate.
Yeah, no, he's a great guy, mate. He contacts us every second day. He puts a post up on one of our sites.
Definitely. So, I think your photo's down the end here, mate, after a couple of minutes. So, there's Pioli.
Tell you what, it's a pretty esteemed crew to be associated with, mate. I'm proud to be on this little list.
Yeah.
So, black and white. So you're shooting this in black and white, or you're shooting in colour and then changing?
No, I'm shooting it in colour, just so I don't have to mess around too much with the camera. But these, believe it or not, these photos, I'm taking them with a $20 lens. This lens, I got it off eBay from China, from somewhere, and it's a little tiny little thing, but because it's so cheap, it's got this really gnarly sort of depth of field, and it's distorted. So the different shapes and shimmies it creates is very different to a traditional lens. And the other aspect is, instead of having a single focal plane throughout the entire frame, it's actually got a ringed shape. There's Berlin, a ring-shaped focal plane. So as you put it onto people and focus on their eyes, it can often pull other elements and stuff in and out of focus, unlike a traditional lens. So I really enjoy it. It's very difficult to use, all manual, of course, but I'm perfect for this kind of job. And I've been really, enjoying the challenge of going back to that single shot, manual focus, taking your time and nailing it,
And so you said there's a shot of Honolulu there, and obviously we see a lot of shots of her in tropical locations, heaps of colour. It really does change the way you look at a picture by taking the colour out.
Oh, definitely, and it plays on your brain. Our brains can process so much, and we actually make a lot of presumptions when we look at an image straight away based on colour, and we create our own imagination. Oh, who's that bloke?
Oh, look at that. Good looking bugger.
But we create these misconceptions, and it's only human nature to do so. When you strip the colour out of an image, you take away all that activity out of someone's brain, and it leaves them with a much simpler view of what they're looking at. So they actually can see things in the photo that they probably wouldn't see when it was colour. The colour was overload. So stripping the colour out, you can start to really engage with the eyes of the person and the texture of those people and the different shades and tones, and see more, I think.
I certainly wouldn't mind if you took away a few textures from my one for next time.
That one's Dave Lombardo, the drummer for Slayer.
Oh, really? Yeah?
Yep.
It's amazing.
You've hung out with some pretty famous people, mate. Who would be your number one person to shoot, like, across all the genres?
Probably that Jason Weeks guy, no.
Slipping months later.
Obviously, touring with big bands, touring with Suicidal Tendencies and stuff. Mike, the singer, he's an incredible guy. He's super generous, very intuitive sort of person, and he takes a lot of respect with him where he goes, and he gets a lot of respect. So the band gets a lot of respect. So when you go on tour with a band like that, and you're with them, you're going to get a lot of respect as well, and it sort of goes two ways. So that sort of thing opens doors for you to meet all sorts of people, and go and meet people like Faith No More. Or in one instance, we were in Sweden and we actually broke into Billy Idol's stage at a festival, me and the guitarist Mike, and they wouldn't let us on. We had the wrong passes, you know how it works in this. But the fact we were with Suicidal Tendencies, and a couple of radio calls later, next thing you know, we were the only people ever to allowed on Billy Idol's stage. So we're dancing away behind Billy Idol. And a week later in London, of course, I met Billy and I told him all about how we broke into his stage, and we had a really good laugh about that. So, getting to do all those things, and is fantastic. And as much as I like to say, I did put in the work to get to those places, but at the same time, meeting generous people like Mike Muir, and being able to be afforded the opportunity to meet all these people and do these things is really wonderful. So
put the work in. What do they say? The harder I work, the luckier I get. I love that photo of Keenan Roxbury you got up there now. And the one of Turbo a minute ago as well. I could look at all those photos all day long.
Yeah.
Especially when you know these people, mate. I'm sure you can see, straight away that's, try to capture who they are. So it's really important.
Keenan's judging you in that photo.
Yeah, I think I scored about a 6, mate. Come on, up your game. Yeah. So this guy here in this one, this is Ra Diaz. He's a Chilean guy, and he actually got employed and picked up the role of playing bass guitar in Suicidal Tendencies a couple of years ago. And he actually went from fan, like me, he was a fan for many years, and he was all over we were friends on Facebook and stuff, and through a bit of luck and obviously his hard work as a bass player, he got the job, and he's loving it. Yeah.
That's the photo, mate. That's the one.
There you go.
Look at that mop. That is spectacular.
Yeah, there's a life of an old salty sea dog right there.
I can't believe Amanda fell for that.
I remember it was funny that morning. I was commentating in Kingscliff at the Australian Longboard Open, and I said, "What face do you want me to have?" He said, "Don't pull a face. Don't do anything. I'm trying to keep my eyes open. I'm tearing up." But yeah, it really, and that's the interesting thing as well. I mean, I'm looking at it myself and being very negative, shall we say, about the wrinkles and the lines. But even they tell a story, and there's a certain honesty to your photography, which I really, really love, mate.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I try, mate, but I know I take pretty good photos, but at the same time, I'm a fan of photography and other photographers. And every day I open up my Instagram and I'm blown away by not just some of my peers and not some of the older crew, but especially what these young kids are doing now. Some of them are really taking it on well, and they're producing stuff that's just blowing my mind. And I feel like a bit of an old man. I feel like an old surfer watching the young crew shred and thinking they're so much better than I was at that age,
Can't be truer words never spoken, but I think you've still got a couple of good years left in you, mate. Now, look, we'll do a quick lap around. I mean, we're already 15 minutes over. I don't care. I could go for another hour. But, Matty, have you got anything more for Luke before we let him go?
No, it was a really good insight, some of those deeper questions, the correlation between some of the music tastes and some of the gigs that he's travelled to and the type of surfing that he's shot and the variety. It's been pretty cool to get that insight. So I've learned a lot today.
Cool. Thanks, mate.
Great, some questions there as well, Matty, as well. Thanks for that, the wax head. And, okay, Vico boy, Nath, anything else? You must, is there a specific technique for chlorine or something?
I reckon he summed it up all really well. Like Matty said, I've learned so much today about photography, and I loved hearing about that Billy Idol story and all your music stuff. Like, it's just mind-blowing, where you can take it when, you just know some pet, like, being in that situation, and then bang. It's like, just goes from there. So, yeah, thanks heaps, man.
No worries, yeah.
And Shawnee Mack, of course, when we were discussing last week, who should we get on to talk about photography? You were the first name that leapt onto his lips. Shawn, you got any final thoughts?
Mate, hey, I just want to thank you for everything you've done for longboarding, mate. Because you've really, the images that you've given to us over the years that I use time and time and time and time and time again, just I don't tire of looking at them. Yeah, and that's the simple thing. And not just the ones that I've had from my comps and that. One that always stands out is that shot of snapper with the lifeguard tower in the front, the wave smashing on the. To me, every time I think of you, I think of that wave or that shot.
Yeah, I get accused of that being photoshopped so many times, and every time I've got to say, no, that actually happened, Yeah.
Oh, mate, it's just such a powerful shot.
Yeah. And likewise, mate, everything you've done, from the malfunction days and stuff. And I know, running comps has definitely got its ups and downs, probably more than surf photography. And the stress that you go through to keep it going on, to make sure the kids have got a comp they can come and get involved in. Getting kids surfing next to their idols, when I see you put that together and make that happen, mate, I think it's a special thing. So,
it keeps me young.
Well, speaking of staying young, but not as good looking as our normal Sunshine Coast host, Riley Thomson, thanks so much for joining us, mate. You've asked a couple of good questions there. Was there anything else you can pick Luke's brains about before we shut it down?
Oh, look, I think the slideshow that's been going on Luke's little profile has been awesome. I've never seen someone so confident using Zoom, which is the platform we're using. And I think having those pictures go up has really kept me entertained. So thanks so much. And it's been great seeing so many photos and especially talking to the person behind the lens. I think it's been great. I haven't met you before, Luke, but yeah, it's been great getting to know you. So thanks so much.
I appreciate your words. Thank you.
And of course, I've known you for a long time. I'm stoked to call you friend. And again, thanks for hooking me up with a new missus. My question I'd like to ask, Sean's.
Oh, no, you ask your question, but don't forget this week, there's the viewer's best question gets the blocks of wax.
Well, okay. So Luke, I'm trying to get in there so I can get my...
I've got the list of questions here. Which
of those questions inspired you the most, mate? Who should I send the free 4-pack of Huey's Choice wax to?
Yeah, I'm gonna go. Jane, very good. Jack's questions, yes.
Don't say
Link. No, I can't. My mates are out. I'm definitely gonna go with the sliced and diced Glenn Solomon.
No, you can't.
Why?
Because he won the viewer competition on the first week and he's already got his $4 away.
All right.
And he's West Australian and we like giving him a hard time. He's Glenn Sol. Everyone calls him Solo. Well, I started calling him Robo Sol because he had a hip replacement. He's a good lad.
Okay.
But you can't
Go
win.
for Jay.
Okay. Yeah. No. Look. You know what? I am going to go for Jay. He was straight in there, and he has supported me emotionally and as a friend for longer than I can count. And he's always frothing, and he's always looking for wax. He's always looking for wax. So, and you guys said, ask you questions, and you know what? He went bang, and 5 minutes later that went up on the Facebook. So, and I hear he's got a bit of a new life and a new wife and all that sort of stuff going on.
And he does great stuff with the froth and grommets, and he's a good lad. He was part of the Van Embassy. We used to go to Evans Head in a few of the competitions and play next to each other. So I'm glad you chose him because it might have seemed like favouritism if I did. I do love Jay. So Jay Mulheron, you'll be getting yourself a 4-pack of the Huey's Choice wax. I'll track you down and find out where you're living these days.
Yeah.
So best viewer question, Jay Mulheron. Good stuff. Well, guys, if you haven't got anything else to add, again, condolences to those involved around that horrible experience at Kingscliff. Stay safe and listen to the warnings on the beach. Avoid sunrise and sunset and so on. But Luke, mate, absolute pleasure having you on the show. And I might even have to ask you if it'd be possible if our viewers put up a few questions on the Facebook page, would you still be happy to answer them? Because we've only touched on such a small part.
Yeah, it's a complex issue, this photography business. So I'm sure there's plenty more. Yeah, feel free to throw something up on the Facebook. I'll check over the next few hours and answer a few things. Or just jump on my Instagram, of course, Liquefy Mag there. And I don't mind Groms getting on there. If they want to send me pictures or hit me up for a bit of advice, I'm always, I'm paying it back as best I can to those people, that did it for me when I was young. So.
Unreal. And that was actually going to be my final question. What was the one thing you wish you had been told when you first started?
And it was Marty Tullerman's, and he told me exactly the right thing. I went up to him very young over at Stratty. I'd taken a few photos and I was probing his head about surf photography, and there's no better person to ask. I mean, he's the guru when it comes to the rates and the industry and the magazines. And he said to me, Luke, he goes, surfers are bums. Don't think that you're going to make any money out of surf photography. And it's still one of the best bits of advice that I could give anybody is whatever preconceptions you have about this grand life surf photographers have, we definitely fake it. If you see a picture of one with all his gear and the ladies hanging off him in some tropical island, I guarantee you that behind all of that is, somebody who's got a bit of misery and pain and is working their ass off just to pay the next lot of bills. So.
And they're probably averaging about $2.35 an hour for the privilege. Now, look, I'm pretty excited. Next week on the show, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have elder statesman of our sport, Mick Marlin, on the show. He also takes a few photos, Luke, so interesting to see a few of those. In fact, some of our photo competition submissions have been taken by Mick Marlin. And we're also going to get the contrasting point of view. On the same show, we're going to have the Smales brothers from Noosa. So Caden and Landon Smales. Caden and Landon. know them pretty well, Riley. They were a lot of fun up at Noosa on the webcast, so they're going to join us next week as well, so we can get both ends of the scale. The old bloke who's been there since before it began, and also find out what's making the grommets froth out. So we'd love to have your company wherever you're watching around the world. I'm going to switch us to gallery view so we can see all these fine folks. Riley, Nathan, Luke, Maddie, Sean, thanks so much, guys. Jack, who ducked off, and Kirra, who we expect to have back next week. Much appreciated to have your company. That's episode 4 of Oz Longboarding done and dusted. We'll see you next week at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yay. Thanks, guys. Hey, have a great show.
Thank you.
I know